Do you like fighting games? I love them. And others must feel the same way with how many fighting games are being released. I hope each one of them has a healthy player base for years to come, but the sad reality is, some games are going to have smaller competitive scenes than others. Not everyone can get 8,000 entrants at EVO Japan. You're considered lucky if your game can hold a double-digit player count on Steam. Then there are those titles that can't even get that far. And that's what this video is about. Here are the top 12 biggest fighting game failures. We're basing this list off of sales, competitive lifespan, company support, and overall effect on the series. These are the titles that could have been a contender, but ended up punching themselves right in the jewels as soon as they got released. Before I begin, it'd be helpful if you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell as well for notifications on future videos. I do have a Buy Me a Coffee account if you feel like supporting the show, or just share the video, that's also free. And with that out of the way, let's begin. Sammy doing a fighting game for Capcom.
What could possibly go wrong?
Everything, it turns out. Legends say that Sengoku Basara Cross was born from the ashes of the cancelled Sammy vs. Capcom. To this day, nothing has surfaced of that title besides the logo, which I think was made in like 30 seconds. While that title seemed like a drunken night idea, something must have clicked between the two, as Arc System Works developed Sengoku Basara Cross for Capcom, and I think they forgot to beta test it. This title launched in Japanese arcades and died the same damn day. Why? You're staring at the reason. Darn near every character in the game has some kind of touch of death or infinite combo, and they aren't particularly fun to watch. Imagine giving every character Spencer's Infinite from Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Contrast Cross to fellow Arc System Works developed fighting game Hokuto no Ken. While that title is a broken mess too, it is a fun broken mess with tentacle combos, lots of love to the manga, and fatal KOs so you don't have to watch a 99-second cutscene.
Fatal KO.
That will never get old. Cross got an unceremonious PS2 port that never left Japan, and the game became nothing more than a kusoge. Its only notable tournament appearance was at Super Battle Opera 2010, and that was only there to promote something else related to the series. I blame this title for why nobody from Sengoku Basara is in any of the Marvel vs. Capcom games. The kind of game you are embarrassed to like. Not me, I have no shame. Believe it or not, Arcana Heart 1 was a bit of a sleeper hit. For a low-key doujinshi game released on dated hardware, it sold decently well and it had a small tournament scene. You can even find footage of Justin Wong playing it in tournaments. The sequel could have helped expand the franchise, but it crashed. While the arcade release went off without a hitch, bar some drama at one of the Super Battle Opera events, the PS2 release was a total disaster. Constant slowdown and lag doomed Arcana Heart's competitive scene outside of Japanese game centers. And even if the port was good, a 2009 PS2 release was ill-advised at a time when everybody was upgrading to PS3s and 360s for the upcoming fighting game renaissance. While the series kind of bounced back with Arcana Heart 3, a game I'm actually very fond of, even that title had a load of issues, mostly these ones. Arcana Heart is a sad series looking back at it. It has unique gameplay and mechanics that make it stand out from other 2D fighters, but the overly moe premise is a turnoff, and factors outside the game hurt whatever momentum it could have had. Even the most recent release of Arcana Heart 3, 6 stars, doesn't seem to have much of a player base from what I've seen. As a consolation prize, Hearts Aino got into BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle. Huh. I just realized that BB Tag also had Yumi from Senran Kagura in it, another moe fan service series that sadly went defunct. What that says about BB Tag, I will let you decide. Do people on TikTok have to call this game Unalive or Alive? DOA 6 was a textbook case of trying to appeal to everybody, resulted in a game that appealed to no one. 6 was marketed as a competitive esports game when it was first announced. Then sometime along the line they decided to ramp up the goon material. It was like the director had an angel and devil on his shoulder pulling him in different directions. One saying,
Think about esports.
And the other one going,
We need to crank our hogs.
What? What does that have to do with it?
No. He's got a point.
the end result hit this middle ground that appealed to nobody, and 6 did not have the gameplay nor netcode to save it. This incident at EVO Japan 2019 probably didn't help things either. Yeah, you'll never see anything like this in the Saudi-owned EVO era. Support ended for the game after 2020, and that was it for Dead or Alive. Well, Venus Vacation exists, but but that is actually made for you to crank your hogs to if you like all of your girls to have the same face and smuggled jello in their swimsuits. That was until 2026 when Koei Tecmo announced a new game plus a re-release of 6. A re-release that felt like a cash grab. You have to buy the Mai and Kula DLC again, and they did nothing to fix the online play. The reason why I'm putting this game so low on this list is that there are some very obvious lessons that can be learned from 6. Plus, Team Ninja and Koei Tecmo have earned a lot of goodwill over the years, but they really do gotta figure out rollback netcode. I'll shotgun a strong if they get the netcode to work in the next game. And you know what? I might as well start now. I'm getting too old for this crap. A Capcom crossover fighting game. That should be the greatest thing since Capcom vs SNK 2. Instead, it was the most damn fool here you go thing ever until that Kenshin fan art that Araki sensei drew. Capcom Fighting Evolution came from the remnants of Capcom Fighting All-Stars, a proper 3D fighting game featuring Capcom's heavy hitters. Due to management changes, the decline of the arcade industry outside of Japan, and poor reception in location tests, All-Stars was cancelled. Yoshinori Ono was brought in to salvage something from the project, and we got this. And it bombed. Instead of being a return to form for Capcom fighters, it was a slapdash product that felt like it was made in an afternoon. Each franchise being true to form was a cute idea. In practice, it just makes for some lopsided gameplay. And playing as 2 characters feels largely tacked on. It did not do well, and it put Capcom's fighting game division in the grave. Much like Sengoku Basara X, this game's biggest appearance was at one of the Super Battle Opera events in Japan. At least I got a nice port via Capcom Arcade Collection 2, which is basically just Capcom vs SNK 2 plus some other games, including this one. The silver lining is that Ono was able to leverage something from this mess and get Street Fighter 4 greenlit, and Ingrid did manage to save herself by getting into Street Fighter 6. Ingrid Outfit 3 must have funded at least 3 new projects at Capcom. It's a shame that Capcom's version of Super Smash Bros. Fell flat on its face. At least we got to see new versions of Midnight Bliss. If your partner is horny for Hisoka, that is a red flag. Same with daily AI usage, following chewing ASMR videos on their socials, and saying that they like Street Fighter V over the other titles. A Hunter x Hunter fighting game is not a bad idea on paper. It worked well for Togashi Sensei's other manga in the past, and 18 was a fan of the source material, and it shows with how creative they got with the IP. It was also clear that the dev team had the budget for a dinner of 4 at Chili's to work with. Actually, the Japanese economy right now is tanking. It's more like they had the budget for a dinner at 2 at a Waffle House to work with. I would not be surprised if Akudi won more money from Evo Paris than what Bushiroad put in their own damn game. Aiden clearly had a lot of passion for the source material, it's just that their passion was being outweighed by Bushiroad's stinginess. Those soap-land adventures must have really been more important than funding their own damn game. The resulting product is horribly balanced, visually unappealing, crappy online, no English dub, Zeltra content, and a crap ton of other things. And they had the balls to charge full price plus a season pass for the shitload of fuck. Do you want to know how badly this game flopped? The Mizumi wiki for the Inuyasha fighting game on PS1 has more information on it than the Hunter x Hunter wiki. Getting mogged by a 2002 PS1 release is an achievement. I was trying to find sales figures for an impact via Wikipedia, and this is what they had to say about the game. That about sums up the whole situation. Talking about this nonsense again. The long-awaited crossover between 2 of the biggest fighting games ever. What should have been a win for 2 communities ended up being a fat L sandwich between a Bob and Rufus sword fight. This title was expensive to produce thanks to licensing fees, getting Polygon Pictures to make the trailers, and that whole cross-assault thing. Capcom tried to make some of that cash back with pay-to-win gems, which threw balance out the window, and they hid 12 complete characters behind a paywall. All that turned public opinion against Cross Tekken early on in the game's life. Sadly, the gameplay could not salvage the title. It was slow, most of the Tekken side did not make the jump to 2D well, and above all else, it failed to get Tekken players into Street Fighter. The 2013 update fixed a lot of issues, but by then it was too little, too late, and it got relegated to the Sunday side event at a major where you're lucky to get 30 entrance bag, a rarity for a major Capcom fighter. We are still feeling the effects of Cross Tekken to this day. with the companion game Tekken Cross Street Fighter being stuck in development limbo. Coupling that is that the main parties that spearheaded this project are no longer at their respective companies. It's easy to compare Cross Tekken to fellow flop Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. That title did some serious damage to Capcom fighting games. Poor PR and visuals doomed the game from the start. However, the gameplay and netcode were salvageable, and there was enough there in Infinite for fellow YouTuber Maximilian to fund a visual overhaul called Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite Beyond. While it does not fix all of Infinite's issues, it at least gave the game a much needed coat of paint. And the damage from Infinite wasn't that severe to stop a proper Marvel vs. Capcom collection releasing in 2024. Meanwhile, Street Fighter Cross Tekken has been forsaken by Capcom and Namco, and it looks like it will remain that way for the foreseeable future. And while I'm here, I don't think we're gonna get a new Project Cross Zone anytime soon. If I could go 1 year without having to bring up Tekken Cross Street Fighter on this channel, I'll be an extremely happy man. Alternatively, getting more views or getting some more money on my Buy Me a Cover account, that would also make me extremely happy. Or Project Cross Zone 3, that would make me very happy too. Someone at Nexon must have watched a Street Fighter event and said, yep, that's our ticket to expanding our series. Dungeon Fighter Online is one of those games like Brawlhalla or Ninjala in the sense that they are veritable cash cows, but you never hear much chatter about them. And quite frankly, I am afraid to meet a Brawlhalla player. DFO still makes lots of cash in Korea and China, so expanding the IP with different games is not a bad idea. Side Games did that with Granblue successfully, so why not follow in their footsteps? Nexon got Ating and Arc Systems to help out in making a fighting game, which is a good start. There was a lot of hype building up to release, with some enjoying DNF Duel's betas more than KOF 15's. DNF Duel was released in 2022 and it quickly fell off the radar for several reasons. For one, despite DFO being a cash cow, the IP is obscure in the grand scheme of things. The whales spending money on DFO don't have much reason to check out a fighting game that has nada for content, an issue that continues to blight fighting games to this very day. Even more than that, the gameplay was all over the place. It's an air dash fighter with no air dash. There are insanely broken moves that fill up the screen without much defensive options, and from what I've seen, most characters had a touch of death combo, and they have some of the most OP characters ever in a fighting game. You think Season 1 JP or Dragunov are broken? Launch Swiftmaster blows them away. There are patches literally just to nerf him and nothing else. Fatally, post-launch support for the title was not there. It took a year for the first DLC character to launch, so you had a game that was absurdly broken with no content in it and no support from the publisher. What do you think happened? To the surprise of absolutely no one, the hype dissipated like cotton candy and liquid. DNF Duel failed to make it to the main stage at any EVO, and after that one Arc World Tour event, everybody moved on in life. The last DLC, Nen Master, launched in April 2024 with one final patch, putting the game out of its misery for good. Side Games proved that you could take your IP from one game to another with enough effort and care. It's clear Nexon did not want to put in the effort to save their game and cut their losses. Back in 2022, I thought about making a video about DNF Duel because I knew this game was going to be dead on arrival. But at the same time, I thought, you know what? If Nexon doesn't care about this game, why should I? Sony does what Nintendo did, and they did it in the most ass-backwards way possible. On paper, a Sony Smash Bros. Clone had potential. The problem is that the characters who gave PlayStation its identity are characters Sony doesn't actually own, and in fact would join Smash Bros. Years later. The characters that Sony does own boil down to mascots that furries yiff to, white dudes, and one-offs that went nowhere. To make matters worse, Sony was very picky with who got in the game. Crippling the game further were second and third parties being very difficult to work with and what characters could be in the game. For example, Team Eco did not allow Superbot to use characters from their titles in it, and anybody from Square or Activision were too expensive to license out. If Nintendo had a hard time with Square for years, no shot that a new developer was getting anything from them at that time. The resulting roster badly dates this game to the early 2010s. Imagine what the commercial would have been like. Hey kids, want to throw down to the hottest fighting game? Pick a PlayStation All-Stars battle. Play as your favorite PlayStation characters like Kratos, Jack, Parappa the Rappa, Fat Princess, the dude from Killzone, and the chick who played Twing Twang and Heavily Sword.
We may need you to play Twing Twang.
We couldn't afford Crash or Lara Croft. Order now and get Dante from the hit remake DMC Devil May Cry. Roster issues aside, the gameplay was also not there. A Smash clone where you could get a KO only via super moves was a boneheaded move. All that means is that you're going to find someone with a spammable level 1 and play them. Even the director regretted that choice. So you have a platform fighting game with a wildly incompatible roster with mechanics that dragged fights out. Little wonder why this title burned out despite clearly lofty expectations from Sony. There was some DLC in the works before Sony gave up on the title, including Tomba, Ryu Hayabusa, and Dart from Legend of Dragoon. I apologize to all of the Legend of Dragoon fans out there. As a lifelong Skies of Arcadia fan, I share your pain of loving a cult classic RPG that has been forsaken by their publisher. Sony has not revisited the idea of their own inter-company fighting game like Smash since. Instead, Sony is choosing to publish Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls, which is shaping up to become their quote-unquote main fighter. Granted, it's coming to PC too, and it's also getting blocked in a number of countries, but this is not a rant about Sony being ran by a bunch of numbnuts. Platformer Astro Bot is something of a Sony and third-party crossover, with so many characters getting outfits for the little Astro dude, including fighting game characters. To be frank, I'm kind of over Sony because they decided that physical media is not cool anymore because, again, Sony is ran by a bunch of greedy numbnuts. Want to scare a Sony executive? Ooh, physical media, so scary. I hope the PS6 freaking bombs. How do you make a comeback after 15 years? Not like this. After the disappointing Virtual on Mars, the robot fighting game Classic returned with a collaboration with the light novel A Certain Magical Index of all things. It kind of makes sense. Sega and Dengeki did collab earlier with Dengeki Bunko Fighting Climax. While not a huge game, it is fun and worth it so you can beat up the incest girl. Well, incest girls. I guess that title did well enough for Sega and Dengeki to collab again with the Magical Index series. Now, you would be forgiven for not hearing about this title until now. It was terribly received in Japan, and Sega stopped making physical copies and pulled the game from online storefronts. Finding anything about this title online is difficult, so I did the logical thing here, and I bought a copy for about 2,300 yen via Amazon. After some time with this game, and by time I mean about 2 hours, this game gave me a strange sense of deja vu. 2-on-2 focused gameplay, the point-based system, auto-locking on your opponent, it all felt like a game I played before, and its name was John Cena. No, not that. I wish it was. It reminds me a lot of Gundam Versus. That title is insanely popular in Japan, with some arcades even having full floors of the game. I guess Sega saw that and thought, yep, that's our ticket to getting back in the game. Yet by going down that route, they made a game that's oddly generic despite its premise. For comparison, I found some high-level Virtual on footage, and you can see that the gameplay is about precise movement, making sure you have your opponent in your crosshairs, resource management, and making sure you can force your opponent into oblivion. A magical Virtual on has autolock, so all of my matches have just been strafing while spamming the blaster. The end result is all my matches feeling vaguely similar to each other, and to the surprise of absolutely no one, it is a total ghost town online. At least there is a story mode if you really care. I do not, and honestly the graphics are kinda balls. If you had spent the years from 2000 to 2018 in jail and this was the first game you saw after getting out of the clink, you would be forgiven for thinking that gaming never got over the Dreamcast. Well, gaming did peak there, but that's an aside. Objectively, the game is fine, maybe if you're hardcore into the Magical Index series, or drunk, which is how I'm about to be. Oh, don't look at me that way. It's not like you guys have never had a Sunday fun day before. Plus, I'm on vacation. I can afford to drink a little bit. And finally, The Rock's Tequila, easily the best thing he's made in like the past 10 or 15 years. For the record, I'm not that into Virtual On or A Certain Magical Index. I am sure I've done the 5-knuckle shuffle to hentai of the latter at some point, and maybe the former. All I can tell you is that this title was not it. I had more fun playing the first Virtual On via Yakuza Kiwami 2 than I did playing the damn crossover, so I recommend just doing that instead of buying this title. The first 2 Virtual On titles still get played, and the toys never stopped. The fact that Sega had to pull this title from store shelves, not due to licensing, but due to how much fans hated this game, is a sign of how badly they fumbled the bag here. Sega has been at a renaissance in the past few years, but I cannot see Virtual On coming back anytime soon. But at the very least, they don't exactly have a high bar to clear between this and Mars. It's like Sega flipped the switch and put this series back into Virtual Off, eh? I have to get at least one bad joke in every video, you know that, right? I don't think a lot of people have heard this title, but for such an obscure game, it's had a lot of history to it. Some of you might remember the Super Smash Bros. Brawl mod, Project M. It was fairly popular from around 2013 to 15. In fact, this game basically saved the Albuquerque Smash Bros. Scene. It was a mod to make Brawl play like Melee and give tournament Smash fans the competitive Smash Bros. Game that Nintendo was not interested in making. Despite a lot of hype and many tournaments for the game, the development team of PM called it a day in 2015. Supposedly out of fear from a lawsuit from the Big N getting jammed right up the bum, but nothing official has ever been confirmed. Smash 4 releasing and PM being banned from Twitch basically spelled death for the title. Now PM is known as that one mod you see every now and again being played by Melee fans who can't do better than 2-and-2 at the Melee local, but I digress. The dev team behind PM decided to take what they learned from that title, make a new studio called Wave Dash Studios, how original, and released Icon's Combat Arena in July 2018. And the response to Icons was a big fat eh. Wave Dash Studios fell into that pitfall that Melee players have in the sense that they know why they play Super Smash Bros. Melee, but not why people play Super Smash Bros. One of the biggest issues of Icons was its utterly drab aesthetic. You can tell that they were trying to ape Overwatch, but missed the fact that Overwatch had some unique designs, or at the very least had characters you could polish the old pole to. Take for example Kid the Goat, a clear shout out to former top Melee player Mango, who everybody called Kid and was considered one of the greatest all time, or GOATs, in Melee. Until he drank himself out of a career. Hopefully he stays sober. The rest of the roster was not much better in terms of visuals. They really should have ripped off Overwatch and gave this girl a fat ass. Speaking of Overwatch, they also ripped off the whole loot box model for cosmetics. Icons was free to play, so they had to make that cash back somehow. Again, without appealing designs, no one was going to spend money on the cosmetics. Loot boxes were also ill-advised when Star Wars Battlefront 2 was fresh in everyone's mind. Aw man, you remember when loot boxes were the biggest controversy in video games? Recent news in gaming makes me long for those days of yore. Ultimately, Icons could not find its market. There was nothing to appeal to casuals, Smash players already had their games, and Melee players don't know anything besides Melee. Icons bombed with only a Legacy edition being its, well, legacy. Despite Icon's failure, there was something there to build off of. The dev team took the L's, rebranded the game as Rushdown Revolt. It's a new game with the same characters, they gave it a graphical overhaul, there's new mechanics, more content. This is it. This is going to be the game that'll take off, right?
No.
No.
It is so hard to find anything about this game online. Hell, I only know about Rushdown Revolt period is because of an awesome sauce video. The Twitter account hasn't been updated since November 2025, and it isn't even their own damn tweets. From what I've read, the dev team behind Rushdown Revolt is no more. It's only a skeleton crew of volunteers updating the title here and there. Bros, it's Jover. This started as a game with $6 million behind it, an audience they were clearly trying to cater to, and they utterly bricked it. Whatever audience Rushdown Revolt would have gained went to Rivals of Aether instead. It too is an indie game, however it has far more of an identity in terms of visuals and gameplay. Rivals made it to EVO 2026, while most of you have never even heard of Rushdown Revolt until now, and will never think about it again as soon as this video is done. Whatever players would have been interested in Rushdown Revolt jumped to Rivals, stuck with Melee, or got banned from the scene. Absolutely no apologies if I offended any Melee or PM players in the audience. I've always wondered where my career would have gone if I got a copy of Capcom vs SNK 2 instead of Melee back in the day. I mean, I'd still be whack at video games, but it's fun to imagine what could have been. I ran a poll on my community tab page about what is your most disappointing fighting game, and unsurprisingly enough, Multiverses won this list. Yeah, this game was a letdown for many people, but I am surprised so many people put in DNF Duel. Like I said, I knew that game was going to be DOA before it even came out, so I didn't even bother buying it. But at the very least, if you did not buy it, you know you're better than that one person in Discord who did buy that game for full price. Same with titles like Hunter x Hunter and some of the other games you see on this list. Multiverses won this poll, so let's talk about it. Another failed platform fighting game, announced by WB Games seemingly as a giant middle finger salute to Nick All-Stars. This was going to be the platform fighting game to succeed. They had the roster, the art, the gameplay that isn't just ripping off Melee, one-on-one and team modes, rollback netcode, voice acting, and it was going to be free to play. The beta for it released in 2022 to a mixed reception. I was not able to play the beta, so I cannot comment on that state of the game. From what I read and seen, the general consensus was the game was fun, had a lot of potential that needed some elbow grease to unlock. However, the game was horribly aggressive with microtransactions, and that was going to hold the title back. Despite a lot of positive buzz, the game went offline in 2023 to prepare for a full launch in summer 2024. And when the full game launched in that fateful summer of 2024, it did not go over well. A year and some change to fix Multiverses turned into a boring floaty mess with even more aggressive microtransactions to the point where damn near most of the roster was hidden behind a paywall. There were valiant attempts from player-first games to salvage the game to no avail. The story goes that Multiverses only had modest expectations, but ended up being way more successful than anyone had anticipated. WB bought player-first games into their roster and messed with the game too much. They saw dollar signs and focused on that too much at the expense of everything else that made Multiverses worth a look. Being developed in the middle of another merger with WB did not help. Ultimately, the gameplay was not there, and it was too greedy for its own good. Multiverses died in May of 2025, ending the game on a lousy note. I spent a whole weekend playing Multiverses when it launched, and I hated it. I had to drop everything to make a video about it because Multiverses pissed me off that much. I think what stings the most about Multiverses' failure is that the potential this game had. A big reason why Rush and Revolt, Sony Smash, and Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite crashed and burned was due to their weak rosters. Multiverses, on the other hand, had a good balance of heavy hitters and obscure picks. I was happy to finally play a heroic Wonder Woman in a fighting game, and she brought her buddy Nubia along. That's a deep cut I greatly appreciate. With how many movies and shows WB has, they could have gone crazy with character choices. You could have people like Neo, Paul Atreides, freaking Godzilla in the same game. The sky was truly the limit with Multiverses. It just needed that bit of love from the executives to make it that awesome platform fighting game that could stand shoulder to shoulder with Smash Bros. Sadly, greed won out and it caused its downfall, much like too many cases in the real world to count. At time making this video, Paramount is still trying to buy out WB, and there seems to be a lot of lawsuits happening, getting shoved right up Ellison's stink. But if there is any kind of higher being, this deal will not go through. We just got a good Superman movie and a good Supergirl movie. I don't want Ellison's ruining the DC universe. We don't need Gal Gadot ruining another Wonder Woman movie. Oh man, corporations, they're going to be the death of us all. Here are some dishonorable mentions. Have you noticed that Square Enix has been cool with their characters getting into other fighting games? Yet they haven't made the effort to make their own. Ignoring Ehrgeiz and Tobal, they kind of had their own fighting game series with Dissidia Final Fantasy. It was a crossover arena fighting game featuring the ass-blastingly popular Final Fantasy series. The original titles were released on the PlayStation Portable, and they seemed to be well loved within the Final Fantasy fanbase. There was a good balance between gameplay and story that made it accessible to RPG fans while just being fun games in general. Reception to the first title and the remake, Dissidia Duodecim Final Fantasy. No, I do not care if I said that wrong, and yes, Nomura was on this project. Seemed to be solid enough. Square decided to expand this idea of a Final Fantasy fighting game, and they tapped into Team Ninja to make an arcade version of Dissidia. Team Ninja got to work on the title to follow up the PSP titles, and they called it Dissidia Final Fantasy. They really worked overtime on that title.
Clever, Peter. Did you stay up all night writing that?
Yeah, I got to bed around 2:30.
It released in Japanese arcades in December 2015, and reception seemed positive enough. Game centers were still popular for fighting games at this time, so it made sense to promote an arcade release. And having 6 machines just for one game is not exactly unheard of for arcade games. I personally did not play the arcade release, but I remember seeing it whenever I went to the game center, so it must have been reasonably popular. Interviews at the time say that they were not aiming for an esports scene, but they were not against it. After 3 years of being an arcade-only title, it eventually found its way to home consoles in January 2018. However, the home port is where it all went wrong. Critics were mostly positive on the title, but fans not so much. Critics praised the gameplay, even if the UI looked like Xenoblade Chronicles 2 fingerfucked the King of Fighters Neowave. There was basically no content in the title. The reason why the PSP games did well is that they had a full single-player campaign to enjoy, as well as plenty of customization. Even if you were not interested in doing the versus mode, the game still had plenty of content to enjoy for non-fighting game fans. Dissidia Final Fantasy NT omitted most of the single-player content from the previous titles, and did not offer much to replace it. So other than a chance to play as the newer characters in the Final Fantasy series, what else was there to do besides grind online? Since the game underperformed commercially, that also meant getting games in online was a challenge too. The gameplay was split into 3-on-3 matches, and without a lot of players, you're not going to find games easily. Low sales equals low player counts equals an absolute ghost town for lobbies. The 3-on-3 gameplay also made this game a freaking nightmare to run tournaments for. You would need to get 6 PlayStation 4s, 6 monitors, 6 copies of the game, and a stable internet connection to get a tournament running. Dissidia Final Fantasy NT sold far below expectations, and support for the title ended quickly. So what puts Dissidia Final Fantasy NT above everything else we've seen in this video? And it can all be summed up in one word: expectations! A certain magical virtual on was an interesting idea executed horribly. But it's a certain magical virtual on. Expectations were low unless you're a 40-year-old Japanese salaryman who only knows the touch of a woman from a time masseuse. Rushdown Revolt had an idea and a market, they just went about it in the worst way. At the same time, it was an indie team trying to fill that gap of competitive Smash Bros. It was a failure, sure, but an important failure for platform fighters. Multiverses had a lot of potential too, but it had one saving grace in the sense that it was free to play, so you only wasted your time on it as opposed to your time and money. This was a Final Fantasy spin-off, a spin-off that already saw success, riding high on the big sales of Final Fantasy 15 and 14 being made by Team Ninja, a company that already had their own line of fighting games. All of that on paper should be a home run. Instead, we got an utterly alienating title that didn't appeal to Final Fantasy fans, fighting game fans, or gamers in general. And you had to pay full price to be let down. And just one more final FU from Square Enix. Square brought back the Dissidia name for a mobile title in 2026. A series being brought back as gacha slop is a sign that your series is cooked. Congrats Square Enix, you win the biggest fighting game flop of all time award. Here's your trophy. So there's my look at some fighting game failures finished, and I hope you enjoyed it. I've been involved in the fighting game community since at least 2005, so I've seen a lot of games come and go. And while some games still have player bases decades later, other games a lot of people forgot even released. It's just a shame that so many games had so much potential but just failed to live up to it for one reason or another. But that's just the way gaming goes. Sometimes your game becomes a big hit, other times it just becomes a big steaming pile of poo-poo. But I think that does it for me in this video, so what did you think? Did you buy in these games? Did you enter tournaments for any of these games? Or what's a fighting game that you're disappointed in? Let me know down there in the comments. And while you're down there, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell bell for notifications on future videos. Feel free to follow me on socials like Twitter, Instagram. I'm being more active on Blue Sky and Threads, so follow me on there. And if you feel like supporting the channel financially, hit my Buy Me a Coffee account. That'd be really appreciated. And with that, I will see you in the next video. Later, everybody. Take care.